Commander Jake Morrison stood at the huge window of what looked like a simple mining station, floating near Neptune. The metal structure stretched out for miles in every direction, with massive drill arms and conveyor belts moving rocks and ice. Any alien ship passing by would see exactly what humans wanted them to see, a desperate attempt to dig resources from the cold outer planets. Jake smiled as he watched. A group of Zephyrian scout ships cruised past at a safe distance. Their sensors would detect nothing unusual about the mining platform. The energy readings matched perfectly with standard ore processing equipment. The heat signatures looked exactly like fusion reactors powering industrial machinery. Even the radio chatter between work crews sounded genuine because it was genuine. What the aliens could not see were the massive weapon systems hidden inside fake rock processors. They could not detect the quantum engines disguised as waste recycling units. Most importantly, they had no idea that the entire structure could transform from a mining platform into the most powerful warship ever built by any species in the galaxy. Dr. Lisa Hayes walked into the observation room carrying a datapad. She had designed this whole deception 30 years ago when humanity first learned they were not alone in the universe. The Galactic Council had made their position very clear. Humans were a primitive species that could barely manage space travel within their own solar system. They were allowed to exist as long as they stayed quiet and caused no trouble. Lisa had other plans. While the galaxy ignored what they thought were simple mining operations, she had been building something that would change everything. Each platform orbiting the outer planets was actually a warship the size of Earth's moon. The mining equipment was real, but it served a double purpose. It gathered the materials needed to build even more weapons while maintaining the perfect disguise. Captain Nick Carter joined them at the window. His uniform looked like standard mining company security, but he commanded a crew of 50,000 trained military personnel. Every person working on the platform had been carefully selected and trained for this moment. They had been living this lie for decades, mining real materials while secretly preparing for war. The communications system crackled to life. Admiral Kate Sullivan's voice came through from Earth's hidden command center. Her message was brief but clear. The Zephyrian Empire had just delivered their final ultimatum to humanity. Surrender all colonies beyond Mars or face complete extinction. They had given humans exactly 72 hours to comply. Jake felt his heart race but kept his face calm. This was what they had been waiting for. The Zephyrians thought they were dealing with frightened humans who had barely figured out how to build space stations. They had no idea that humanity had spent 3 decades building the largest and most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. Lisa activated her personal communicator and sent coded signals to similar platforms throughout the solar system. Around Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and in the asteroid belt, identical mining stations received the same message. Project Titan was moving to its final phase. The galaxy was about to learn what humans were really capable of when they had time to prepare. The Zephyrian Empire controlled over 200 star systems. Their military had conquered dozens of species and destroyed many more. They had weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been broken. Their ships were fast, deadly, and commanded by warriors who had been fighting for centuries. By any reasonable measure, humanity should have surrendered immediately. But the Zephyrians had made one crucial mistake. They had judged humans based on what they could see. The small colonies on Mars looked primitive. The space stations around Earth seemed barely functional. The mining operations in the outer system appeared to be desperate attempts to gather resources. Everything visible suggested a species struggling to survive in the hostile environment of space. Nick pulled up the tactical display showing the real situation. Hidden throughout the solar system were 47 combat platforms, each one disguised as industrial equipment. The platforms could combine into larger formations or operate independently. Their weapons could reach targets in other star systems. Their defenses could withstand attacks that would destroy entire planets. More importantly, the platforms were mobile. Dr. Hayes had solved the fundamental problem of moving objects the size of small worlds at faster than light speeds. While alien fleets took months to travel between stars, humanity's disguised warships could cross the galaxy in weeks. The enemy would never see them coming until it was too late. Jake watched another alien patrol ship scan their platform with deep space sensors. The readings would show exactly what the computers expected to find: mining equipment, storage facilities, and processing plants. The massive fusion reactors powering the station's real weapons would appear to be simple power sources for industrial machinery. Even the crew quarters housing trained soldiers would look like standard worker housing. The deception went deeper than just hiding military equipment. Humanity had been playing the role of a weak species so well that they had convinced themselves. Earth's governments publicly worried about alien invasions. Human colonies sent desperate messages asking for protection from the Galactic Council. News broadcasts showed scientists struggling to understand alien technology that seemed impossibly advanced. All of it was theater designed to make humanity appear helpless. While the galaxy focused on more dangerous species like the Void Singers or the Consortium, humans had been quietly building something unprecedented. They had weaponized entire worlds while making it look like they were barely surviving. Lisa checked her chronometer. In exactly 68 hours, the Zephyrian deadline would expire. Their invasion fleet was already gathering in the outer reaches of the solar system. Long-range sensors detected over 3,000 ships preparing to demonstrate the fate of species that defied the Empire. They expected to find humans cowering behind the inner planets begging for mercy. Instead, they would find empty space around Earth and Mars. The real human population had been moved to the disguised battle platforms years ago. The cities and bases the aliens planned to destroy were already abandoned. Humanity had been preparing for this war longer than most alien species had been spacefaring. Nick activated the internal communication system and sent a message to all crew stations. The mining operation would continue normally until the moment of truth arrived. Every drill had to keep working, every conveyor belt had to keep moving, every processing unit had to keep refining ore. The performance had to be perfect right up until the moment they dropped their masks. Jake looked out at the stars and thought about what was coming. The galaxy had treated humanity like children playing with dangerous toys. They were about to discover that humans had been building something much more dangerous than toys. The species that had been dismissed as primitive miners were actually the most advanced military power in the galaxy. The deception was almost over. The Zephyrian invasion fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, with overwhelming confidence. Fleet Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display show 3,000 warships arranged in perfect battle formation. His empire had used this same formation to conquer 47 different species over the past 2 centuries. Each Zephyrian ship was a masterpiece of military engineering. Their hulls could withstand direct hits from plasma cannons that melted asteroids. Their weapons could punch through planetary shields and crack continental plates. The smallest ship in the fleet carried enough firepower to destroy a human city. The largest could glass an entire world in a matter of hours. Zethkar expected to find the humans hiding behind their inner planets like frightened children. Intelligence reports suggested they had maybe 50 small warships and a handful of orbital defense platforms around Earth. The invasion should take less than a day. After that, humanity would serve as another example of what happened to species that refused to obey the Empire. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster watched the alien fleet approach from her command post buried deep inside what appeared to be Neptune's moon Triton. The Zephyrians had no idea they were being observed by sensors more advanced than anything their empire had ever developed. Every ship in their formation was being tracked, analyzed, and targeted by systems they could not even detect. Amy smiled as she watched the aliens arrange themselves for what they thought would be an easy victory. Dr. Paul Bennett had spent 15 years developing the quantum sensor arrays hidden throughout the outer solar system. The Zephyrians might as well have been signaling their positions with giant spotlights. Their stealth technology was useless against sensors that could detect individual atoms moving through space. Fleet Commander Zethkar ordered his ships to advance toward the inner planets. Long-range scans showed no human military vessels in the expected positions. Earth's orbital platforms appeared to be powered down. Mars showed no defensive activity at all. The humans had either fled the system or were attempting some kind of pathetic ambush near their homeworlds. Admiral Kate Sullivan received the tactical updates from her command center hidden inside what the aliens believed was a simple asteroid mining platform in the Kuiper belt. The Zephyrian fleet was moving exactly as predicted. Their formation was designed to overwhelm primitive defenses, but it left them vulnerable to attacks from unexpected directions. In exactly 18 minutes, they would reach the point of no return. Kate opened a secure communication channel that connected her to 47 similar command centers throughout the solar system. Each station appeared to be nothing more than industrial equipment on the surface. Underneath the fake mining gear were the most powerful warships ever built by any species. The time for deception was finally over. Captain Alex Stone stood ready on the bridge of what would soon be revealed as the USV Leviathan. For 30 years, his ship had maintained the appearance of a simple ore processing facility orbiting Saturn. His crew of 50,000 had lived their entire adult lives preparing for this moment. They had trained in secret, maintaining their cover while becoming the most skilled military personnel in human history. The transformation began with a simple command from Admiral Sullivan. Across the solar system, massive structures that had appeared to be mining equipment for 3 decades suddenly started changing. External panels designed to look like storage tanks and processing units began sliding away to reveal the sleek hull of a warship underneath. Fake conveyor belts and drilling arms retracted into hidden compartments. Fleet Commander Zethkar stared at his tactical display in growing horror as his sensors detected impossible energy readings from throughout the human solar system. The mining platforms his scouts had dismissed as primitive industrial equipment were revealing themselves as military vessels. But the size readings had to be wrong. No species built warships larger than a few kilometers. These readings suggested ships the size of small moons. Captain Alex Stone felt the deck plates vibrate as his ship completed its transformation. The USV Leviathan was 3,000 kilometers from end to end and had its own artificial gravity field. The ship's main weapons could destroy targets from light years away. Its defensive shields could absorb the combined firepower of an entire alien fleet. Most importantly, it could move faster than anything its size should have been able to manage. Dr. Rachel Green's revolutionary quantum engines had solved the fundamental problem that had limited warship design for millions of years. Traditional physics said that massive objects could not accelerate quickly or travel at high speeds. Her engines ignored those limitations by manipulating space-time itself. Ships the size of worlds could now move like fighters. The Zephyrian fleet found itself surrounded by enemies they had never imagined could exist. In every direction, what had appeared to be empty space or industrial equipment was revealing massive warships. The humans had not built a small defensive fleet. They had constructed mobile battle stations that dwarfed anything in the galactic military databases. Commander Zethkar tried to process what his sensors were telling him. The largest human warship was generating gravitational fields strong enough to affect the orbits of nearby asteroids. Its energy output exceeded the total power generation of most civilized worlds. The weapon systems his computers could detect were beyond anything in Zephyrian technology. Captain Lucy Ward commanded the USV Prometheus from her position near the asteroid belt. Her ship was one of the smaller human vessels, but it still massed more than the entire Zephyrian invasion fleet combined. She watched as enemy ships tried to scan her vessel and failed to understand what they were seeing. Their computers could not process the idea of a warship that was also a mobile city. The revelation was complete. Humanity had spent 30 years building not just warships but entire civilizations that could fight. Each vessel contained manufacturing facilities, resource processing plants, population centers, and everything needed to wage war independently for decades. They were not just military units. They were mobile nations designed for conquest on a galactic scale. Fleet Commander Zethkar realized that his empire had made a fatal error in judgment. The species they had dismissed as primitive miners had actually built the most advanced military force in the galaxy. His 3,000 ships faced enemies that could probably destroy his entire home system without taking significant damage. The hunters had become the prey. Admiral Sullivan's voice echoed across all communication frequencies as she broadcast humanity's response to the Zephyrian ultimatum. The galaxy had 72 hours to acknowledge human sovereignty over all systems, within 50 light-years of Earth. Any species that refused would face the consequences of underestimating what humans could build. When they had time to prepare, the age of deception was over. The age of human dominance had begun. The first shots of the war were not fired by weapons but by the simple act of revealing the truth. News of humanity's real military power spread across the galaxy, faster than their massive ships could travel. Every species that had dismissed humans as primitive miners suddenly realized they had been watching the construction Of the most dangerous fleet in galactic history, Colonel Danny Price led the assault on the Zephyrian home system aboard the USV Thunderstorm. His ship was considered small by human standards, but it still dwarfed the largest Zephyrian dreadnought by a factor of 50. The enemy had built their empire over 3 centuries by conquering dozens of weaker species. Danny dismantled their defenses in less than 3 days. The Zephyrian capital world had orbital defense platforms that had never been breached in 200 years of warfare. Their planetary shields could absorb the energy output of a small star. Their fleet bases contained weapons designed to destroy entire invasion forces. None of it mattered when faced with ships that could generate their own gravity, wells and manipulate space-time itself. Dr. Rachel Green watched from the bridge as her quantum engines allowed the massive human warships to move in ways that violated every known principle of physics. While Zephyrian fleets took months to cross between star systems, the USV Thunderstorm had traveled 47 light-years in just 2 weeks. The enemy had no time to prepare defenses or call for reinforcements. The battle for the Zephyrian home system was not really a battle at all. It was a demonstration of what happened when a species that had mastered stellar engineering decided to go to war. Danny's ship parked itself in orbit around the enemy capital and began systematically destroying every military installation on the planet's surface. The defenders could not even scratch his ship's shields. Emergency signals flooded communication networks throughout the galaxy as reports came in from every corner of Zephyrian space. Human warships had appeared simultaneously in 17 different star systems. Admiral Ben Rivers had somehow divided his fleet and struck targets that were hundreds of light-years apart on the same day. The strategic mobility this demonstrated made traditional space warfare obsolete. The Galactic Council called for an emergency session as panic spread through their member species. How could ships the size of small worlds move faster than conventional fleets? How had humanity hidden this capability for decades? Most importantly, what did they plan to do with power that made every other military force in the galaxy look like children playing with toys? Captain Lucy Ward commanded the USV Prometheus on a mission to demonstrate humanity's power to potential allies. Her ship's gravity manipulation systems could tear apart enemy fleets without firing a single conventional weapon. She watched as consortium vessels caught in artificial gravity wells crumpled like paper being squeezed in a giant fist. The consortium had considered themselves the most advanced military power in the galaxy. Their ships used technology that most species could not even understand. Their weapons could destroy planets from outside a solar system. Their shields had never been penetrated by any known force. Lucy's ship disabled their entire fleet in 18 minutes without taking any damage. News networks across the galaxy struggled to explain what was happening. Military analysts who had spent their careers studying space warfare found themselves obsolete overnight. The humans had not just built better ships. They had created an entirely new form of warfare based on mobile battle stations that could establish planetary blockades, reshape solar systems, and project power across distances that made traditional fleets useless. Colonel Steve Parker's reconnaissance ship provided intelligence on enemy movements throughout the galaxy. What he discovered was terrifying from a human perspective, but probably necessary for their survival. Every major species was mobilizing their complete military capacity. Ancient enemies were forming alliances that had been impossible just weeks earlier. The galaxy was uniting against humanity. The hegemony had been the consortium's greatest rival for over 1,000 years. The two powers had fought countless wars and would normally never cooperate on anything. Now their combined fleets were training together to develop tactics that might work against ships that could manipulate gravity itself. Fear of humanity had accomplished what diplomacy never could. Admiral Kate Sullivan reviewed tactical reports from across human space. The revelation of their true power had achieved its primary goal of ending the immediate threat from the Zephyrian Empire, but it had also created a much larger problem. Every species in the galaxy now saw humans as an existential threat that had to be destroyed before they became even more powerful. The Void Singers were the most mysterious and dangerous species known to galactic civilization. They lived in the empty space between galaxies and rarely involved themselves in the affairs of younger races. Intelligence reports suggested that even they were considering direct action against humanity. When beings that could manipulate dark matter decided you were dangerous, the situation had reached a new level. Captain Tony Mills received orders to begin Phase 2 of humanity's expansion plan. While the galaxy focused on responding to their military demonstration, human ships were already establishing bases in uninhabited star systems. The massive warships were not just weapons. They were mobile colonies that could create new human settlements anywhere they traveled. Each human battle platform contained manufacturing facilities that could build anything from simple tools to new warships. They carried populations of engineers, scientists, and workers who could establish permanent bases on any world suitable for human life. The ships were not just conquering territory. They were creating new human civilizations faster than the galaxy could track. Dr. Paul Bennett's analysis of enemy communications revealed the scope of what humanity was facing. The combined military forces of 43 different species were being organized into the largest armada in galactic history. They were stripping defenses from their homeworlds and abandoning territorial disputes that had lasted for centuries. Everything was being sacrificed to destroy humanity before they could establish permanent dominance. The galaxy had awakened to the threat that humans represented, but they had also awakened humanity's greatest advantage. Humans had always been at their most dangerous when facing impossible odds. The species that had built planet-sized warships in secret while maintaining the appearance of primitive miners was not going to be intimidated by numbers alone. Admiral Sullivan began preparations for the real war that was coming. The demonstration was over. Now they would discover whether human ingenuity and determination could overcome the combined military might of an entire galaxy. The stakes could not be higher. This would be a war for the survival of human civilization itself. The galaxy's response to humanity's demonstration of power was swift and unprecedented. For the first time in recorded history, every major species put aside their ancient conflicts to face what they now recognized as a threat to all non-human life. The consortium abandoned their territorial wars with the hegemony. The Void Singers emerged from their dark space habitats. Even the mysterious ancients sent representatives from their hidden worlds. Commander Tony Mills received intelligence reports from human agents embedded throughout galactic civilization. The enemy coalition was not just mobilizing their regular military forces. They were activating weapon systems that had been sealed away for millennia. Ancient artifacts that could destroy star systems were being brought out of storage. Technologies banned by galactic law for their destructive power were being prepared for use. The hegemony's War Council made a decision that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. They began sharing their most classified military technology with their oldest enemies. Weapon designs that had been state secrets for centuries were being distributed to anyone willing to fight against humanity. The coalition understood that normal military thinking would not work against ships the size of worlds. Admiral Kate Sullivan studied tactical projections with her senior staff aboard the hidden command station. Dr. Greg Turner's analysis painted a grim picture of what humanity was facing. The enemy coalition would field over 50,000 warships supported by orbital defense networks that spanned entire star systems. The odds were nearly 100 to 1 against human forces, but numbers alone did not tell the whole story. Captain Jill Thompson's reconnaissance ship had been tracking enemy movements for weeks from the edge of known space. The USV Shadow could observe enemy fleets without being detected, thanks to stealth technology that made human ships invisible to most sensors. What she discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. The alien coalition was having serious problems coordinating their forces. Species that had been fighting each other for thousands of years could not easily work together. Their communication systems were incompatible. Their tactical doctrines conflicted with each other. Most importantly, they had no experience fighting enemies that could appear anywhere in the galaxy with little warning. Colonel Steve Parker's fleet had been conducting hit-and-run attacks across 3 sectors to test enemy responses. His ships would appear in a star system, destroy key military installations, and disappear before local defenses could react. The strategy was working, but the enemy was adapting faster than expected. They had learned not to engage human ships directly. Instead of trying to fight humanity's massive warships in open battle, the coalition was focusing on cutting supply lines and isolating individual vessels. They understood that even ships the size of worlds needed resources and maintenance. If they could prevent human forces from supporting each other, they might be able to destroy them one at a time. The Void Singers brought a new element to the conflict that worried human strategists. These ancient beings could manipulate space-time in ways that even human quantum technology could not fully understand. Their ships existed partially outside normal reality, making them difficult to target or track. They had weapons that could affect matter at the quantum level. Dr. Rachel Green's engineering teams were working around the clock to develop countermeasures against enemy technologies they had never encountered before. The ancients possessed devices that could age metal to dust in seconds. The consortium had learned to create artificial black holes as weapons. The hegemony was using dimensional rifts to attack targets from impossible angles. Captain Amy Foster commanded the defense of humanity's most important industrial base hidden in the Oort cloud. Her facility was producing new warships and weapons at an incredible pace, but it was also humanity's most vulnerable target. If the enemy could locate and destroy the shipyards, human expansion would stop and their existing forces would slowly be worn down. Intelligence reports suggested that the coalition had developed new sensor technologies specifically designed to detect human stealth systems. They were conducting systematic searches of every star system where humans might have hidden bases. Sooner or later, they would find the industrial facilities that were the foundation of human military power. The enemy was also learning from their defeats. After losing dozens of fleets to human gravity manipulation weapons, they had developed tactics that minimized their vulnerability. Instead of concentrating their forces, they spread them across multiple star systems. Instead of defending fixed positions, they kept their ships constantly moving. Captain Roy Evans discovered this new strategy when his ship arrived at what intelligence had identified as a major enemy base. Instead of finding a large fleet guarding important facilities, he found empty space and automated defense systems. The real enemy forces were scattered across a dozen nearby systems, ready to converge if humans committed significant forces to an attack. The coalition was also targeting human civilian populations in ways that violated every rule of civilized warfare. They had identified several human colony worlds that appeared to be defenseless and were preparing to destroy them completely. The message was clear. Humans could build the most powerful warships in the galaxy, but they could not protect every human settlement from retaliation. Admiral Sullivan faced the most difficult decision in human history. The enemy coalition was preparing to commit genocide against human civilians while using tactics that made it almost impossible for human warships to effectively retaliate. Traditional military strategy suggested that humanity should concentrate their forces to protect their most important assets. But Dr. Paul Bennett's analysis suggested a different approach. Instead of trying to defend everywhere, humanity should focus on offense. Their advantages in mobility and firepower were best used for striking at enemy homeworlds rather than protecting scattered human colonies. It was a cold calculation, but it might be the only way to force the coalition to negotiate. The preparations for the final phase of the conflict were taking place in the dark spaces between stars where ancient civilizations had once fought wars that reshaped entire galactic regions. Both sides were bringing weapons and technologies that had never been used in actual combat. The battle that was coming would determine whether humans remained a species or became extinct. Captain Tony Mills received the final intelligence reports as enemy forces began moving toward the coordinates that would become the site of the war's climax. The coalition had committed everything to this battle. If humanity could survive what was coming, they would face a galaxy with no remaining opposition. If they failed, human civilization would end in the cold vacuum of space. The final battle began in the void between galaxies where ancient weapon caches left by extinct civilizations provided the stage for a war that would reshape the cosmos. The combined fleets of 43 species faced humanity's planet-sized warships in a conflict that stretched across light years of empty space. This was not just a battle for territory or resources, but a war that would determine which species would guide the galaxy's future. Admiral Kate Sullivan commanded the engagement. From the bridge of the USV Terminus, humanity's largest battle platform, the ship was so massive that it had cities built into its hull and populations that had never seen natural sunlight. Her crew included entire generations of humans who had been born, raised, and trained aboard warships. As the enemy coalition approached like swarms of deadly insects, She knew this moment would define humanity's place among the stars forever. The alien armada was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 57,000 warships from dozens of different species had been organized into a single fighting force. Ancient Void Singer vessels that existed partially outside normal spacetime flew alongside consortium dreadnoughts and hegemony battlecruisers. Weapons that had been banned for millennia were being prepared for use against targets they had never been designed to face. Captain Roy Evans commanded the USV Thunder during the opening phase of the battle. His ship took critical damage within the first hour as waves of enemy fire sought weak points in humanity's defenses. 20,000 crew members worked desperately to keep weapons online, while automated repair systems struggled to patch hull breaches that were kilometers wide. The scale of destruction was unlike anything seen in previous galactic conflicts, Dr. Helen Cross's experimental shielding systems were being pushed beyond their design limits as the human fleet absorbed firepower that could have destroyed entire star systems. Her gravity manipulation technology created defensive fields that bent space itself around human ships. Enemy weapons that should have penetrated any known armor were deflected harmlessly into empty space. But the galaxy had underestimated humanity's most important advantage. While other species had focused on building bigger guns and stronger shields, humans had done something completely different. They had transformed their warships into self-sustaining civilizations that could fight independently for years without external support. Each vessel contained everything needed to repair damage, replace losses, and continue fighting indefinitely. The battle raged for days as both sides committed forces that represented the military might of entire civilizations. Enemy ships were destroyed by the thousands, but they kept coming in seemingly endless waves. Human casualties were lighter, but each loss represented decades of construction and irreplaceable technology. The outcome remained uncertain as both sides exhausted conventional weapons and began deploying systems that had never been tested in actual combat. Commander Pete Johnson's ship was the first to deploy humanity's ultimate weapons system. The Genesis protocol had been developed in absolute secrecy over the past 15 years. Instead of destroying enemy forces, it created new resources and manufacturing capacity directly on the battlefield. Dead asteroids were transformed into industrial facilities that immediately began producing ammunition and replacement components. The alien coalition watched in horror as humanity demonstrated that they were not just fighting with existing ships and weapons. They were fighting with the ability to create new military assets faster than the enemy could destroy them. Human ships that should have been running out of supplies were actually growing stronger as the battle continued, Captain Lisa Ward observed from her command post as the tactical situation shifted in humanity's favor. The enemy had planned for a war of attrition, where superior numbers would eventually overcome human technological advantages. They had not planned for an enemy that could literally create new worlds and factories in the middle of a battle zone. The Void Singers attempted to use their most powerful weapons to break the deadlock. Ancient devices that manipulated the fundamental forces of reality were activated for the first time in millions of years. Space itself began to tear as dimensional barriers were breached. Energy that existed before the formation of stars was released in controlled bursts aimed at the largest human vessels. But humanity had prepared for this possibility. Dr. Rachel Green's quantum engineering teams had studied ancient technology for decades through careful archaeological expeditions. They understood the principles behind weapons that most species considered incomprehensible. When the Void Singers unleashed forces that should have destroyed reality itself, human ships absorbed the energy and converted it into power for their own systems. The turning point came when Admiral Sullivan activated the complete Genesis network. Every human ship in the battle zone began working together as a single massive construction project. Instead of fighting individually, they were building something that had never existed before, a mobile industrial complex the size of a solar system that could manufacture anything humans needed to continue expanding. Fleet Commander Zethkar realized that his coalition had made a fundamental error in understanding what they were fighting. These were not just warships that happened to be very large. These were mobile civilizations designed to spread human control across the galaxy through sustainable conquest. Even if they destroyed every existing human vessel, The industrial capacity being created during the battle would allow humanity to build even larger fleets. The alien coalition faced a choice that no military force in galactic history had ever confronted. They could continue fighting an enemy that grew stronger during combat, or they could surrender to a species that had demonstrated the ability to reshape reality itself. The decision was made easier by the fact that human forces were already appearing in star systems throughout the galaxy. Captain Alex Stone's reconnaissance division had used the battle as a distraction to establish human bases in over 200 star systems. While the galaxy's attention was focused on the main conflict, humanity had been quietly claiming territory and resources across thousands of light years. The war was already over before the final shots were fired. Surrender came not through formal negotiations but through the simple recognition that resistance was impossible. The galaxy that had dismissed humans as primitive miners now acknowledged them as the dominant military power in local space. Species that had ruled star empires for millennia found themselves accepting human authority over their own homeworlds. Admiral Sullivan established humanity's new galactic government from her command ship. The species that had been building planet-sized warships in secret had become the galaxy's new rulers through the demonstration of power that could not be challenged. The mining platforms around Neptune continued their work, but now openly revealed as shipyards building even larger vessels for expansion into neighboring galaxies. The galaxy was never ready for what humanity had built in secret, and it would never be ready for what they would build in the open.